The massive chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for an emergency session. Ambassador Haiyan Wu stood at the center podium, his hands trembling slightly as he prepared to address the most powerful beings in known space. "Council members," he began, his voice echoing through the vast hall. "What I am about to show you will change everything we thought we knew about warfare." The lights dimmed and a holographic display materialized above them. The footage showed a space battle unlike anything the Council had ever witnessed. Human ships, smaller and seemingly outmatched, moved with precision that defied explanation. They struck at weak points that shouldn't have been visible, coordinated attacks that seemed impossible without telepathic communication. Elder Taman, whose species had ruled the outer sectors for millennia, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. These humans number barely 8 billion across all their colonies. How can such a small population pose a threat to the established order? "Watch closely," Haiyan Wu replied, advancing the footage. "This is the Battle of Proxima 7. The Zephyrian Empire brought 12 dreadnoughts against 3 human cruisers. The assembled representatives watched in stunned silence as the human vessels seemed to dance around the massive enemy ships. Instead of engaging in traditional long-range bombardment, they closed distance rapidly, using the larger ship's bulk against them. Within minutes, 2 dreadnoughts were disabled, their crews surrendering. Council Speaker Dahai leaned forward. "Impressive tactics, but hardly unprecedented. The Veltar used similar strategies during the Spiral Wars." "That was just the beginning," Haiyan Wu said grimly. "Show them the analysis, Ji-hoon." Intelligence Director Ji-hoon activated his datapad. "We have records of 17 separate conflicts involving human forces over the past 50 standard years. In every single engagement, regardless of odds or technological superiority of their opponents, humans have emerged victorious." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Representative Sunya from the Trade Federation spoke up. "Surely you exaggerate. No species has a perfect combat record." "The data is verified by multiple independent sources," Ji-hoon continued. "But the victories themselves are not what concerns us most. It's how they achieve them." The hologram shifted to show battlefield footage from different conflicts. In each scene, human forces displayed the same unnerving characteristics. They adapted their tactics mid-battle, often completely changing their approach when faced with new threats. They showed no fear of casualties when necessary, but also demonstrated remarkable ingenuity in minimizing losses. "Notice how they respond to our conventional tactics," Haiyan Wu pointed out. "When faced with a standard pincer movement, they don't retreat or attempt to break through. Instead, they allow themselves to be surrounded, then turn the into a trap." Young Sik, a military observer from the Hegemony Coalition, stood up. "I was present at the Kepler Station incident. What you're showing here doesn't capture the full horror of facing them in battle." The chamber fell silent as Young Sik continued. "They don't just fight to win the current engagement. Every move they make seems calculated to teach them something about their enemy. By the 3rd day of that battle, they were predicting our tactical decisions before we made them." "That's impossible," Elder Timon declared. "No species can process battlefield information that quickly." "We thought the same thing," Young Sik replied, "until we realized they weren't just processing information faster, they were learning. Our patterns, our decision-making processes, our weaknesses. It was like fighting an enemy that became more dangerous with every exchange." Dohai called for order as the discussion grew heated. "What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador Haiyan Wu?" "We must classify humanity as a Class X combat species," he stated firmly. "This designation has only been used twice in galactic history, for species so dangerous that direct military confrontation was deemed inadvisable." The proposal sent shockwaves through the assembly. Class X status meant acknowledging that humans posed an existential threat to any civilization that chose to fight them directly. "You're talking about 8 billion individuals spread across dozens of worlds," Representative Myung protested. How can they possibly warrant such classification? Because it's not about numbers. Intelligence analysts, Yoonji interjected, stepping forward with additional data. Our psychological profiles suggest that humans possess a unique combination of traits that make them exceptional at warfare. They have what we call persistence hunting instincts, allowing them to pursue objectives relentlessly. They show remarkable pattern recognition abilities, letting them identify weaknesses in enemy formations that others miss. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Most disturbing of all, they display an unusual capacity for what they call learning under fire. They literally become better warriors as the battle progresses. The vote was called after hours of heated debate. When the results were announced, the decision was narrow but clear. Humanity would be classified as Class X, joining only the extinct destroyer swarms and the mysterious void wraiths in that category. As the session ended, representatives filed out quietly, each lost in thought about what this meant for the future. For the first time in galactic history, an entire species had earned the most feared designation, based not on their technology or numbers, but on their ability to make war itself into an art form. The galaxy had found something it had never expected: to encounter a species that was simply too dangerous to fight. Intelligence analyst Sunya stared at the data screens surrounding her workstation, unable to believe what 3 months of research had revealed. The numbers made no sense, according to everything the galaxy knew about military science. "Director," Ji-hoon, she called across the research facility, "you need to see this immediately." Ji-hoon hurried over, his expression growing more concerned as he reviewed the compiled data. "These measurements can't be correct. Run the analysis again." "I've run it 12 times, Sunya replied, pulling up comparison charts. Human muscle density averages only 0.73, compared to galactic standard. Their reaction times are slower than 60% of known species. Their natural armor is practically non-existent. She switched to another display showing combat footage. Yet here they are, consistently defeating forces that should crush them easily. The footage showed human soldiers facing off against Krugan shock troops, massive beings with natural body armor and strength levels 3 times greater than humans. The logical outcome should have been a massacre. Instead, the humans moved in coordinated patterns, using terrain and teamwork to neutralize their physically superior opponents. "It defies basic military science," Ji-hoon muttered, studying the tactical breakdown. "How do inferior specimens consistently outperform superior ones?" Sunya brought up her most disturbing findings. "I think I know why, but you're not going to like the answer." She activated a holographic display showing brain scan comparisons between humans and other species during combat situations. "Look at the neural activity patterns. Most species show decreased cognitive function under battle stress. Humans show the opposite." The scans revealed something unprecedented. While other species' brains simplified their processing during combat, falling back on instinct and basic responses, human brains actually increased their complexity. Multiple regions activated simultaneously, creating neural networks that didn't exist during peaceful conditions. "They get smarter during fights," Sunya explained. "Their stress response doesn't just prepare them for physical combat. It enhances their ability to process information, recognize patterns, and adapt strategies in real time." Ji-hoon sat down heavily, the implications hitting him. "That's why conventional tactics fail against them. We're fighting an enemy that becomes more intelligent as the battle intensifies." "There's more," Sunya continued, bringing up psychological profiles. "They have something they call learning from failure. Most species avoid repeating actions that led to defeat. Humans actively study their failures to understand what went wrong." The data showed battle reports from various conflicts. In every case, when human forces suffered initial defeats, they didn't retreat or regroup using the same strategies. Instead, they completely restructured their approach based on what the defeat had taught them about their enemy. Commander Young-sik, Report from the Hegemony Wars mentions this, Ji-hoon recalled. He said fighting humans was like facing a different army each day, even though it was the same soldiers. Sunya nodded and pulled up interview footage with survivors from various conflicts. Listen to what they say about human behavior in extended engagements. The first clip showed a Zephyrian naval officer. Day 1, they fought like any other species. Day 2, they started predicting our formations. By day 4, they were setting traps, using tactics we didn't even know they had observed us using. Another survivor, this one from the Nexus conflict, appeared on screen. It was like they were studying us instead of just fighting us. Every exchange taught them something new about how we operated. By the end, they knew our procedures better than some of our own officers. This explains the pattern we've been seeing, Ji-hoon realized. Quick conflicts with humans end in narrow victories for either side. Extended conflicts always result in human victory. Sunya brought up her final analysis. They have what I'm calling adaptive combat evolution. Other species enter battle with fixed capabilities and strategies. Humans enter battle with the ability to develop new capabilities and strategies based on what they encounter. The display showed a timeline of a 6-month conflict between humans and the Hegemony Coalition. At the beginning, human forces used standard military doctrines similar to other species. By the middle of the conflict, they had developed entirely new fighting techniques specific to their enemies' weaknesses. By the end, they were using tactics that military scholars had never seen before. They don't just learn from their own experiences, Sunya explained. They learn from their enemies' techniques and incorporate them into their own fighting style. Some human units were observed using modified versions of hegemony tactics against hegemony forces. Ji-hoon stood up and paced around the workstation. So we're dealing with a species that becomes more dangerous every time someone fights them. Exactly. Every conflict makes them better at warfare in general, not just against that specific enemy. Sunya pulled up the most chilling data of all. Our analysis suggests that human military capability has increased by approximately 15% with each major conflict over the past century. They're not just winning wars, Ji-hoon said quietly. They're using wars to evolve their entire approach to combat. The two analysts sat in silence, contemplating what this meant for the galaxy. Humanity wasn't just another military power. They were a species that treated warfare itself as a learning experience, becoming more formidable with each battle they fought. Sunya finally spoke. Director, I recommend we add a special notation to their classification. This isn't just about their current capabilities. It's about what they might become if conflicts continue. The human paradox was clear. Individually weak, collectively unstoppable, and constantly growing stronger. Commodore Myung stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the holographic display show her fleet's perfect positioning around Arcturus Station. 200 ships of the Nexus fleet surrounded the human outpost, their weapons trained on every possible escape route. Admiral Sung-ho, she transmitted to her second-in-command on the nearby dreadnought. This should be finished within 6 hours. Standard siege protocols. Sung-ho's voice crackled back through the communications system. Understood, Commodore. The humans have nowhere to run. Their supply lines are cut, and they're outnumbered 50-1. Myung smiled with satisfaction. The human station was small, holding maybe 3,000 personnel. Her fleet carried over 100,000 trained soldiers and the most advanced weapons in Nexus space. This would be the engagement that proved humans weren't invincible after all. Begin bombardment, she ordered. Target their defensive positions first. The first wave of attacks lit up space around the station. Energy beams and plasma charges struck the human shields, which flickered and began to weaken, as expected. But something was wrong. Instead of returning fire from fixed positions, the human response came from unexpected angles. Commodore, her tactical officer called out, they're not firing from their main weapon emplacements. The shots are coming from maintenance ports. Mayan frowned and studied the display. The humans had somehow mounted weapons in locations that shouldn't have been able to support them. Worse, their targeting was unnaturally accurate, striking weak points in her ship's armor that required detailed knowledge of Nexus construction methods. How do they know where to aim? She muttered. The answer came quickly. Her communications. Officer intercepted human transmissions and ran them through the translation matrix. What they heard chilled everyone on the bridge. Section 7. Their shield generators are located 3 meters below the main hull breach. Target coordinates uploading now. Confirmed. Their weapon systems show power fluctuations every 47 seconds. Time your shots accordingly. They're analyzing our ships in real time. Sung-Ho's voice came through, tension clear in his tone. They're learning our weaknesses as we fight. Myung watched in growing alarm as her perfectly planned siege began to unravel. Human fighters, small craft that should have been easily destroyed, moved in patterns that seemed to predict her fleet's responses. When she ordered her ships to adjust their formation, the humans had already moved to counter the new arrangement. This is impossible, she said. They can't be reading our tactical communications. We're using quantum encryption. Her intelligence officer looked up from his station, face pale. Commodore, they're not reading our communications. They're reading our behavior. Every time we adjust our strategy, they adapt faster than we do. The battle continued for 3 hours, and with each passing minute, Myung realized they were facing something beyond normal military capabilities. The humans weren't just defending their station. They were studying the Nexus fleet like scientists, examining specimens. Admiral, she called to Sung-Ho, prepare for full assault. No more careful approaches. But when the full attack began, the humans were ready. They had somehow identified the exact timing and coordination patterns the Nexus fleet would use. Defensive positions that appeared empty suddenly bristled with weapons. Traps that shouldn't have existed activated at precisely the right moments. Commodore, her tactical officer shouted. The humans are launching some kind of boarding craft. Myung stared at the display in disbelief. The tiny human ships were heading directly for her largest vessels, moving through weapons fire that should have destroyed them instantly. But they weren't just flying randomly. They were using the Nexus fleet's own formation against them, hiding in blind spots and using larger ships as shields. How are they navigating our defensive grid so easily? She demanded. The answer came from her own weapons officer. Ma'am, they're using our previous attack patterns against us. They've memorized how we position our ships and where we create gaps in our coverage. Within the next hour, the impossible happened. Human boarding parties had captured 6 of her ships, using weapons and tactics that seemed specifically designed to counter Nexus security systems. The humans moved through the ships as if they had blueprints, heading straight for critical systems while avoiding heavily defended areas. They know our ship designs better than we do, Sung-Ho reported, his voice strained. They're using our own corridors and maintenance shafts to outmaneuver our security teams. Myung realized with growing horror that the siege had reversed. Her fleet was now trapped, unable to retreat without abandoning the captured vessels, unable to advance without facing more of the same impossible tactics. Commodore, her communications officer announced, the humans are sending a message. The transmission was brief and delivered in perfect Nexus language. Nexus fleet, you have fought well and taught us much about your capabilities. We offer you the chance to withdraw with your remaining ships. Continue this engagement, and we will be forced to capture your entire fleet. Myung stared at the message, understanding finally dawning on her. The humans hadn't been trying to win quickly. They had been learning, studying, and preparing. Every hour of the siege had made them more dangerous. While her own fleet had remained static, her final transmission to Nexus Command was simple. Do not engage humans in extended conflicts. They don't fight to win battles quickly. They fight to understand their enemies completely. The retreat order came 12 hours later, leaving behind 8 captured ships and a lesson the galaxy would never forget. Dr. Dong Yan carefully stepped through the ruins of what had once been the greatest fortress in the galaxy. The massive stone blocks, each weighing several tons, lay scattered like children's toys across the barren landscape of Terminus Prime. Research Assistant Yunji, he called to his colleague, who was examining strange markings on a fallen wall. Bring the scanner here. I need to confirm what I'm seeing. Yunji hurried over with the archaeological equipment, her boots crunching on debris that had been accumulating for over 2 centuries. Professor, these symbols don't match any known writing system from this sector. That's because they're not from this sector, Dong Haiyan replied grimly. This is the 12th site we've examined, and each one tells the same story. The scanner beeped as it analyzed the ruins around them. The results confirmed what Dong Haiyan had feared to discover. This fortress, like all the others, had belonged to a different galactic civilization. All had shared one fatal characteristic. They had tried to conquer humanity. Show me the timeline again, Dong Yan requested. Studying the datapad that contained 3 years of research, Yunji pulled up the chronological display. The Hegemony Empire, destroyed 300 years ago. The Chronos Federation, fallen 270 years ago. The Stellar Dominion, collapsed 250 years ago. The list continued, each entry representing a once mighty civilization that had controlled vast territories and commanded fleets of thousands of ships. Each had possessed technology superior to early human capabilities. Each had decided that humanity posed a threat that needed to be eliminated. Each had failed completely. Look at this pattern, Dong Haiyan said, pointing to battle records they had recovered from various sites. Every single empire started their campaigns against humans with overwhelming advantages. The records showed the same story repeated 12 times. Initial engagements where human forces suffered heavy casualties. Confident reports from military commanders about swift victory. Then, gradually, the tone of the reports changed. Read. This one from the Stellar Dominion archives, Yunji said, translating the ancient text. Day 15 of the campaign. Human resistance continues, but their tactics have evolved. They no longer engage our forces directly. Instead, they strike at supply lines and communication networks. Dong Haiyan nodded, having seen similar accounts from every civilization. And this one, Day 30, human forces have begun using captured Dominion weapons. Somehow, they have modified our own technology to work more effectively than our original designs. The pattern was always the same. Humans would suffer initial defeats, then begin adapting at a rate that seemed impossible. They would study captured enemy equipment, learn from each battle, and develop new tactics specifically designed to counter their opponent's advantages. Professor, look at this, Yunji called, from deeper in the ruins. She had discovered a vault containing strategic planning documents from the fortress's final days. The documents revealed the most disturbing aspect of human warfare. The final report from the fortress commander read, "We have concluded that the humans deliberately allowed us to capture several of their outposts in the early phases of this conflict. Analysis of the abandoned positions shows they were designed to give us false information about human capabilities and weaknesses." Dong Haiyan felt a chill as he read the translation. They were letting their enemies think they were winning. It gets worse, Yunji continued reading. The captured human equipment was intentionally left behind when we attempted to reverse engineer their technology. The devices provided false data about human manufacturing capabilities, leading us to underestimate their industrial capacity by over 300%. The archaeological team had discovered evidence of this pattern at every site. Humans had turned warfare into a science, using each battle not just to defeat their immediate enemies, but to learn everything possible about how different species fought, thought, and made strategic decisions. They were conducting experiments, Dong Haiyan realized. Each war was a chance to study a new type of opponent. The final piece of evidence came from the deepest vault in the fortress. Ancient recordings showed the last days of the siege, when human forces had surrounded the supposedly impregnable stronghold. The fortress commander's final entry was haunting. The humans arrived with weapons specifically designed to counter our defenses. They knew the exact frequency needed to disrupt our shields. They brought tools perfectly suited to breach our walls. It is as if they studied our construction methods for years before beginning this assault. Yunji looked up from the recording device. Professor, that's exactly what they did. We found evidence at 7 other sites showing humans had infiltrated enemy territories years before declaring war, studying everything from military tactics to architectural weaknesses. The scope of human strategic thinking became clear as they examined more evidence. Humans didn't just prepare for battles, they prepared for entire wars, decades in advance. They studied their potential enemies long before conflicts began, gathering information that would be crucial when fighting finally started. Every civilization that fought them made the same mistake, Dong Hyun concluded. They thought they were fighting a war. The humans knew they were conducting a comprehensive study of their enemy, with the war being just one part of a much larger strategy. As the sun set over the ruins of the 12th fallen empire, the archaeological team understood why the galaxy had begun to fear humanity. They weren't just good at fighting wars. They had turned war itself into a tool for understanding and ultimately dominating any civilization foolish enough to challenge them. The graveyard of empires stood as a monument to humanity's most terrifying capability, the ability to learn from their enemies until those enemies no longer existed. The final session of the Galactic Council convened under circumstances no one had ever imagined. For the first time in galactic history, every single member civilization was present, their representatives filling the massive chamber to capacity. The topic was simple: what to do about humanity. Council Speaker Jae-won stood at the central podium, her usual composed demeanor showing cracks of strain. The past month of debates had been unlike anything the council had experienced. Fear was a new emotion in these halls, and it showed on every face present. Members of the council, she began, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. We have reviewed all evidence presented regarding human military capabilities. The vote on the proposed Terra Accords is now before us. Ambassador Minho shifted nervously in his seat. As representative of the Outer Rim Coalition, he had seen firsthand what happened to civilizations that chose warfare over diplomacy with humans. The empty seats around him belonged to species that no longer existed to send representatives. Before we proceed, Jae-won continued, Elder Hyanwoo has requested permission to share final observations. The ancient being rose slowly, his species, having witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations over millennia. Council members, in my long life, I have seen many dangerous species. I have witnessed wars that consumed entire star systems, but I have never seen anything like what we face with humanity. The chamber remained silent as Hyanwoo activated a holographic display showing a galactic map. Red markers indicated the locations of the 12 extinct civilizations that had fought humans directly. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Each of these empires possessed advantages over humanity, he explained. Superior technology, larger populations, better resources. Yet all fell to the same phenomenon. Humans do not simply fight wars, they evolve through them. Representative Sunya from the Trade Federation spoke up. Elder, surely you exaggerate. No species can be completely invincible. You misunderstand, Hyanwoo replied. Humans are not invincible. They can be defeated in individual battles, even suffer significant losses, but they have developed something far more dangerous than invincibility. The ability to guarantee that any civilization fighting them will eventually lose, regardless of initial advantages. He switched the display to show strategic analyses from various conflicts. Every species that has engaged humans in extended warfare has discovered the same pattern. Humans treat each battle as a learning opportunity. They study their enemies so thoroughly that they become better at fighting those enemies than the enemies are at fighting themselves. The implications sent murmurs through the assembly. Director Ji-hoon, now serving as military advisor to the council, stood to address the chamber. We have documented cases where human forces used enemy tactics more effectively than the species that created those tactics, he reported. They don't just adapt to their opponents, they improve upon their opponents' own strategies. Young Sik, the veteran commander, added his testimony. I have fought alongside many species, and against many others. Humans are unique in that they become more dangerous as conflicts continue. Most species exhaust their capabilities over time. Humans expand theirs. The debate that followed was unlike any in Council history. Usually, military discussions focused on fleet strengths, technological advantages, or territorial disputes. This time, they were discussing whether an entire species was simply too dangerous to fight under any circumstances. The proposed Terra Accords J1 announced, reading from the official document, established that direct military confrontation with humanity is to be avoided through all possible means. Diplomatic solutions shall be prioritized in all interactions. Economic and cultural exchange are encouraged, but military alliances against human interests are forbidden. The final clause was the most significant. Any member civilization that initiates unprovoked military action against humanity shall receive no support from the Galactic Council and may be subject to immediate expulsion from this body. Representative Youngji voiced the concern many shared. Are we essentially surrendering galactic sovereignty to a single species? No, Elder Hyen-woo answered. We are acknowledging reality. Humans have achieved something unprecedented. Complete military deterrence through demonstrated capability rather than current threat. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Every civilization present, from the mighty Trade Federation to the smallest colony worlds, agreed to the Terra Accords. The message was clear. The galaxy would coexist peacefully with humanity, or risk the fate of the 12 extinct empires. As the session concluded, something remarkable happened. Ambassador Minho received a transmission from human diplomatic channels. The message was brief but profound. The Terran Federation appreciates the Council's commitment to peaceful coexistence. We look forward to continued cooperation and mutual prosperity among all galactic civilizations. The humans, it seemed, had been monitoring Council proceedings and approved of the decision. More importantly, they appeared to prefer diplomacy over warfare, despite their overwhelming military advantages. In the days that followed, military academies across the galaxy began implementing mandatory courses in human conflict studies. The curriculum focused not on how to fight humans, but on how to avoid fighting them entirely. Recruitment centers displayed new posters with a simple message: diplomacy first, learn from history. The greatest irony was not lost on political observers throughout the galaxy. Humanity had achieved complete strategic dominance without conquering a single world, without demanding tribute, and without establishing an empire. They had simply demonstrated that fighting them was a path to extinction. The unspoken accord was simple. The galaxy would find ways to coexist with humanity, because the alternative was to join the graveyard of empires that had learned too late what it meant to face humans on the battlefield.